They buried my father on a rainy morning, but what paralyzed me wasn't the weather. It was the funeral program. Thick, glossy, with a photo of my sister holding Dad's hand on the cover, and not a single word about me. No name, no mention of younger daughter, not even a seat near the family. I sat in the back row, like an outsider at the very funeral of the man who once called me the pride of his life. Then my sister took the mic, chin high, voice calm like she was accepting a medal. My father left everything to me. His career, his passion, and his legacy. I looked around. No one flinched. They applauded. They applauded. As I was erased. My name is Camilla Dawson. I'm 36 years old. I co-founded Dawson Ventures, a real estate and tech investment firm in Northern California. People used to say I was the strategic brain and my sister Vanessa was the public face. But don't be fooled. I built the plans. I built everything from scratch when my father, Richard Dawson, barely knew how to send an email. My father died from a sudden stroke without warning. But that wasn't as painful as discovering I had been slowly cut out of his legacy, piece, by my own family. The funeral took place at Lambert & Sons Funeral Home in Palo Alto, a place known for hosting some of the most prominent financial figures. I came alone, not because I had no family, but because they had all chosen the other side. 3 black Cadillacs pulled up front, and I saw them. My mother, my sister Vanessa, her husband Jason, and the current board of directors. They walked through the main entrance. I took the side door. I wasn't listed at the reception. One staffer asked, "Are you family?" I pressed my lips. "I'm his daughter." She paused, checked the list again, then murmured, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see your name." "It's fine," I answered coldly. "Just find me a seat where I can hear the speeches." They placed me near the back of the hall, next to the section for distant acquaintances. People who only knew my father through business cards. I looked up at the stage. Vanessa walked out in a tight black dress, eyes confident, hand on the podium. "My father," she began, "was a man of vision, and today as the rightful CEO of Dawson Ventures, I promise to continue the mission he started." No mention of me. Not a word about the daughter who sat beside him through hundreds of meetings, bleeding through the startup years. When the memorial video played, I fought back tears. Clips of my father shaking hands with presidents, cutting ribbons, standing at industry conferences. But not one single image of him with me, even though I took 70% of those photos. The funeral ended with applause and champagne. Yes, champagne. They raised their glasses and said he had lived a glorious life. I walked out the old way, past cold hallways, my chest tightening into stone. But I still didn't cry. Not yet. 3 days later, I received an invitation to the reading of the will at the family's legal firm, Lawrence & Weller, LLP. I arrived on time. There were 6 people in the room. My mother, my sister, 2 attorneys, a financial advisor, and 1 empty chair. For me. The lawyer opened the will, reading in a steady tone. "Per the wishes of Mr. Richard Dawson, the following estate allocations shall proceed." I held my breath. The entirety of Dawson Ventures shares, including fixed assets, liquid accounts, commercial real estate, and intellectual property, shall be transferred fully to Mrs. Vanessa Dawson. I went numb. "As for Miss Camilla Dawson," he continued, voice unchanging, "she shall receive an honorary payment of $35,000 and a framed portrait of Mr. Richard Dawson from his former office." No one said a word. No one looked at me. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, the corner of her mouth rising like she wanted to say, "You don't belong here." I sat still, eyes fixed on the table. How? What had I done to deserve this brutal erasure? $35,000, a painting, while the company was valued at nearly $450 million. The lawyer turned to me. "Miss Dawson, would you like to respond?" I stood. "No," I said. Let the truth respond for me. I left the office without looking back, but I knew this wasn't over. I tried to convince myself things would quiet down, that one unfair will couldn't erase 10 years of building. But then, a single email blew that illusion apart. A week after the reading, I sat in my Oakland penthouse, coffee long cold. My inbox pinged. Subject line raw and blunt. Congrats, Vanessa. All clean now. The email had been sent to my old company address, one I thought had been deactivated. But apparently the system still routed it to my personal inbox, like a ghost that refused to die. I opened it. Sender: Abby Tran, Vanessa's executive assistant. The message was short. She has it all now. No loose ends. Transfer finalized. Camila's out. Cheers. I read it again and again, my heart pounding. Transfer? What transfer? I tore through my archives. I didn't recall signing any agreement to relinquish my shares to Vanessa. But when I accessed the old internal data system, using a backdoor script I'd set up for emergencies, I found something that hit like a punch to the throat. A PDF file, titled, Internal Transfer, Legal Authorization, 4/3/2020. My signature was there. Neat, complete. Under Transferring Party, Camila Dawson. Under Receiving Authority and Full Asset Control, Vanessa Dawson. I froze. 2020. That was when I was managing the acquisition deal in Austin. And yes, Vanessa had once asked me to sign some documents to streamline accounting for a temporary branch merger. I remembered that night. She poured me a glass of white wine, smiled softly. Camilla, you worry too much. It's just some temporary paperwork. Trust me, okay? I had trusted her. Like a blind fool. But what I signed wasn't this. I remembered clearly. The document I reviewed was a limited 90-day authorization for the Texoma branch. No clauses about asset transfers or full control of the entire corporation. I raced to the office of Ronald Greaves, my private attorney since business school. His office was on the 19th floor of the Sapphire Building downtown. Ron looked concerned when I slammed the folder down. They used my hand to strangle me, Ron. He examined the file, page by page. His lips tightened at my signature. This is your real signature. But the content was altered, and this version lacks a clear effective date. It wasn't even notarized properly. Azine, I signed a different version, not this one. Then they swapped it. They kept the original version you signed, edited the content later, reprinted it and embedded your signature either by scan or stitching it from an old file. Do you still have the version you signed? I shook my head. It was the end of the day. Vanessa said she'd send me the notarized copy later. I trusted her. Ron sighed and looked at me. We can prove fraud if we find the original draft or someone who witnessed the signing. Is there anyone who knows about it? I closed my eyes. A name slashed through my mind like a knife in the dark. Derek Sloan. Derek was a temporary legal assistant at the company during that time, responsible for reviewing contracts and power of attorney documents. He was present when I signed. I remember the look in his eyes as I picked up the pen. But he disappeared not long after. Let go due to restructuring in the legal department. I pulled out my phone and dialed. No answer. I checked LinkedIn. His profile was still up, freelancing in San Diego. I messaged, Derek, I need to talk, urgent. About the 2020 authorization document. 3 minutes later he replied, I knew this day would come, send me the address. I'll be there. 3 days later, at a small cafe in the Mission District, Derek showed up looking more worn out than I remembered. He pulled a USB drive from his coat pocket. I kept the original draft and the internal emails between Vanessa and the legal department. I almost deleted them. But something stopped me. I held my breath as he opened the file on his laptop, the original version I had signed. completely different from the one Vanessa used to seize power. There was also an email from Vanessa, sent internally to the company's lawyers. She doesn't need to know. As long as the signature matches. We'll adjust the content and file a new copy with a matching timestamp. No one's going to check. My vision went dark. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a plan, crafted, deliberate, executed by my own sister, the one who once called me her partner. I left the cafe with a ringing in my ears, my heart pounding like a war drum. But this time, I didn't run. I pulled out my phone and texted Ron. I have proof. And I'm ready to begin. The sky wasn't raining that day, but the air was thick like a warning. What Vanessa thought was her victory was now the blade turning against her. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't burn it all down. I would expose everything, every signature, every lie, with the brutal precision she once taught me to wield. I used to believe that even if I lost my shares, my authority, at least my name would remain in the company's history. I was wrong. 3 weeks after meeting with Derek, I received an invitation from an old friend. Lena Morris, who used to work in the company's marketing department. She invited me to attend the launch event for Dawson Ventures' new branding campaign. You should come, Lena said, voice hesitant. You need to see what they've done. The event was held at the Pacific Regency Hotel, right in the heart of San Francisco. I went with Ron. We pretended to be business guests. No one noticed. We were just two faces among hundreds of investors, partners, and press, packed into the ballroom. On stage, a massive LED screen displayed the new slogan, Dawson Ventures, redefining legacy. Below it was a photo of Vanessa in a white suit, standing in front of the headquarters with a stern gaze. Beside it read, Sole Founder. Direct heir. I froze. Since when had I, the legal co-founder, the one who stood by my father from the garage days, been erased from every line of introduction? Then the video began. The first scene showed my father, Richard Dawson, speaking at a 2012 investment seminar. In the original video, I clearly remember standing beside him, nodding after every line, holding the mic and presenting the strategy. But in this version, I was completely cut. The angles were changed. Only Vanessa appeared next to him, as if she alone had been there that day. I clenched my hands so tightly my nails drew blood. The next clip showed a 2015 contract signing. The pivotal moment we expanded into Arizona. I had been the lead negotiator with our partners. Everyone in senior leadership knew that. But in the edited version, my dialogue was replaced by Vanessa's voice. My speaking segment was swapped out for her silent nod. The entire video was refashioned like a political propaganda reel. When it reached the History of Dawson Ventures documentary, I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. In 7 minutes my name was never mentioned. No photos, no narration, no small caption. Every early group photo was cropped or repositioned. One original image with me at the center was flipped into a portrait of just my father and Vanessa. They used editing software to erase every trace of me, as if I never existed. I turned to Ron and whispered through clenched teeth. She didn't just steal the company, she's erasing my presence from records and memory. Ron didn't reply. He just pulled out his phone and began recording the entire screen presentation. We left the ballroom before the speeches started. I didn't need to hear Vanessa drone on about the future of the company. A future built on the burial of my past. That night, I returned home and opened my laptop. I searched through every file I had. Emails, proposals, presentation decks, original footage from our earliest conferences. I had everything. I had been the one filming, writing, presenting. My father and I built Dawson Ventures from the ground up like two mad engineers chasing a dream. Vanessa only arrived after the first office lease and the first revenue stream. I reopened the 2012 conference footage, the unedited version. I was there, standing tall, white shirt, hair tied back, eyes lit, as I spoke about the intersection of real estate and artificial intelligence. I talked for 4 full minutes, met with thunderous applause. Not Vanessa. No one else. I saved a new copy, titled, Not Erase. I also found an internal email I had written in 2016 to the executive board, proposing international expansion. My full name, timestamp, and responses from my father and directors were all included. Vanessa wasn't part of that email chain at all. The deeper I searched, the more I saw how much had been altered. She hadn't just manipulated the present, she was rewriting the past. A week later, I received an anonymous message with a link to Dawson Ventures' newly released PR archive. I clicked. The Founder's Handbook, distributed to business students, was entirely Vanessa's narrative. Stories she'd never lived. Victories she never earned. I opened a blank Word document. At the top, I typed one line. I didn't disappear. I was made to disappear. I didn't need to scream to be seen. I needed light, truth. And if Vanessa wanted to rewrite the story in her version, I'd show her. History isn't a PowerPoint slide you can edit at will. It's written in blood, sweat, and loyalty. The one thing she never had. I didn't expect the first piece of evidence to arrive on a rainy night. It was 2:43 in the morning. I was sitting by the window, holding a cold cup of tea, my mind heavy. The documents I had gathered were scattered across the table like the aftermath of a violent raid. Rain tapped against the porch roof like a frantic heartbeat. I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but because I knew deep down that a missing piece was still out there. Then my phone buzzed. No call, no message, just an email. No subject, no sender. Just one attached file. Will_draft_handnote_2p. I hesitated for a few seconds. My first instinct was doubt. Scam, malware, some sick joke? But something in my gut told me. Open it. The screen lit up, casting a pale blue glow into the dark room. The PDF loaded slowly, as if even the data understood the weight of the moment. And I almost stopped breathing. On screen was a handwritten will with blue ink annotations, the kind of ink my father always used, the one he called the color of trust. The first line began in his familiar slanted handwriting. I, Richard Dawson, being of sound mind and acting voluntarily, hereby declare the distribution of my personal estate as follows. I skimmed past the introduction. When I reached the section on company assets, the same one that the official will had left entirely to Vanessa, this version was completely different. Shares in Dawson Ventures will be divided equally between my 2 daughters, Vanessa Dawson and Camila Dawson, 50% each. Both shall hold equal voting rights, and I trust they will continue to grow the company in their own ways, with integrity. Directly below, a note written in all caps, circled in dark blue ink. Camila will handle it the right way. I choked up, not from pain, but from finally being able to breathe again. My father hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't turned his back on me like I'd once believed. That one simple sentence shattered the resentment I had carried for so long. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. What I felt in that moment wasn't emotion. It was purpose. I studied the date. The will was written on March 14, 2023, 32 days before his final hospitalization. He had still been fully lucid. At the bottom, his signature, strong and firm, impossible to forge. But the most chilling part wasn't the content. It was how this document had vanished. Why had I never seen this in any legal meeting? Why hadn't Cass and Barlow, our family's law firm, ever mentioned it? I took a screenshot, saved copies across 3 different storage platforms, and sent the PDF to Ron with a single message. Track the source, verify legal status, tell no one, not even Lena. 3 hours later, when the rain had just stopped, I drove to my mother's house. An old estate in Woodside, 40 minutes from the city. I didn't call ahead. She opened the door with a face like carved stone. That same calculated calm I'd known for 36 years. "What are you doing here at this hour?" she asked, coffee in hand, not inviting me in. "I just have one question," I said. "Did Dad ever tell you how he planned to divide the company?" She frowned slightly. "He said Vanessa was more suitable. Why? What about splitting the shares equally?" Her eyes flicked. In that split second, I saw guilt flash like a shard of broken mirror catching the light. "No, that was never discussed." "Then what do you know about the handwritten will dated March 14th of last year?" Silence. Her hand gripped the coffee mug tighter, almost spilling it. "Who told you?" "The only one who needed to, in his own handwriting." I turned around without waiting for a reaction. Before leaving, I placed a printed copy of the PDF on the porch table, with the circled note. "Camilla will handle it the right way." I didn't need a confession. I needed disruption. And I had just planted it in her mind. That evening, Ron called back, his voice tight with energy. I checked. That will did exist in Cass and Barlow's system, but it was removed 3 days after Richard was hospitalized. It was marked as a temporary submission, but never formally filed. Who submitted the final version? Vanessa. She filed a new one, completely omitting your name. The file has a note. Father agreed to simplify structure. But there's no video record. No witnesses except a private notary, who has since left and can't be contacted. I exhaled. Cold. Well, what do we have? We have an original draft, written while he was still medically sound, signed, and evidence that the final version was filed without proper verification. If you want to go to court. This is the beginning of the Bay Area's biggest inheritance lawsuit. I stared at my screen. The words, "Camilla will handle it the right way," still glowed among thousands of files. No one else would handle this for me. Not anymore. Now it was my turn. Not for revenge, but to restore the truth to where it belongs. I knew I couldn't walk into this battlefield alone. Vanessa didn't just have power. She had money, legal teams, and a PR machine sharp enough to turn crime into a success story. If I was going to flip the board, I needed allies. And I knew exactly who to call. The first was Marcellus Reed, former chief financial officer of Dawson Ventures from its founding year until his abrupt retirement 3 years ago. He was the only person who had seen me work side by side with my father. Nights spent auditing budgets, 20-tab Excel sheets, strategy drafts I scribbled before typing for hours. I called him on Monday morning, just before sunrise. He picked up after 3 rings. "Camilla? I need to meet. Urgent. About Vanessa. About the company." A pause. Then 4 words. "Meet me in Redwood." We met at an old records facility, once used by Dawson Ventures to store original documents before going fully digital. The steel door groaned open with a heavy screech. The smell of old paper and rusted metal hung in the air like a government archive. Marcellus led me to an unmarked filing cabinet. He unlocked it, pulled out a drawer, and laid a thick folder sealed in plastic on the table. I kept originals of all board meeting minutes from 2013 to 2020. Plus early versions of internal policy drafts, where your name is listed as co-author, co-signer. I carefully flipped through each page. It was definitely my signature. My father's handwriting was right beside it. I recognized the scribbled notes immediately. I had written them at 3 in the morning, in my old apartment, after Dad called and said, "I need a draft by tomorrow." Vanessa erased me from the company's history. I said quietly. Marcellus nodded, his eyes filled with bitterness. "And now it's time you take back every piece they cut out." I brought all the certified copies to Ron's office. He immediately contacted a handwriting verification expert to authenticate each document, but one crucial piece was still missing. Technical proof of digital alterations. The tool Vanessa had used to make me vanish from the system. And only one person could help with that. Lyndon Poe. Lyndon had been a software engineer on Dawson Ventures' internal migration team in 2021 during the shift to cloud infrastructure. That was also when every trace of me was erased. After being suddenly removed from the team, he started a cybersecurity firm in Berkeley. I found him on a rainy afternoon. His office had only 2 employees. Lyndon came out, leaner than before, but his eyes still sharp. "Camila, I thought you weren't in the system anymore." "I'm not. That's the problem." I explained everything. The will, Marcellus's evidence, and how I needed him to find traces of technical manipulation. Any system logs that proved data tied to me had once existed, then was edited, renamed, or deleted from the original records. Lyndon nodded, then exhaled. "You have no idea how long I've waited for a reason to dive back into that mess." 3 days later, Lyndon called. I found it. I went straight to his office. On screen, he showed me restored log entries pulled from a backup archive. The kind the IT team thought they'd erased. The commands were clear. USDA_402-project_lead, Camila Dawson. Timestamp, April 22, 2020, 11:48 p.m. Applied, project_lead, changed to Vanessa Dawson, timestamp, April 23, 2020, 2:13 a.m. "They didn't delete you," Lyndon said, his voice rough. "They replaced you, like you were just a placeholder they could rename." I stared at the white text on a black screen and felt a chill. "Can you prove the source of the change?" "Yes, I have a full snapshot of the original system, and I also have emails from the marketing team discussing the optimization of leadership image. They referred to you as not compatible with the modern brand identity." I smiled. Not from joy, but because I knew this was undeniable evidence. I asked Lyndon to back up all the data onto a separate encrypted hard drive, timestamped and signed for chain of custody. I would use it like a dagger, not to stab in the dark, but to dissect what they thought they had buried forever. On the way home, I stopped halfway across the Bay Bridge, looking out at the dark waters. I thought of my father, the man who wrote "Camila will handle it the right way," with a hand that trembled but never broke. I couldn't save him, but I could save the truth. And I had just claimed the first sword. No blood had spilled, but the war had begun. The elevator stopped on the 29th floor with a cold ding. I stood before the frosted glass doors of Dawson Ventures' executive boardroom, the stage that used to be mine. I wasn't back to ask for a seat. I came to break the table they built on lies. Inside, the room looked like a futuristic warship. Elliptical glass table, LED walls, muted golden lighting. 12 people were already seated. Board members, legal advisors, investment reps, and at the head of the table, none other than Vanessa Dawson, hair pulled into a tight bun, crimson lips, white suit like she was ready to run for president. She glanced at me for a second, then turned away. No greeting, no nod, she didn't need to. In Vanessa's eyes, I was just a ghost stepping out from a past she thought she had buried. I didn't bring a lawyer. No laptop. Just me. A USB drive in hand, and a thick folder clamped shut in a steel clip. Mark Pennington, the board chair, spoke first. "Today's meeting is to focus on next quarter's brand strategy, and I've been informed that Camila Dawson has something to present." I stepped toward the table. No preamble. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to deliver the truth. Something this company has distorted for the last 2 years." One click. The screen behind me lit up. The first slide appeared. Fabricated history, Dawson Ventures. I plugged in the USB, launching the first video. It was the original 2012 investment conference, footage of me standing next to my father, explaining our expansion strategy. My face illuminated under stage lights, my voice steady and clear. The screen then switched to the edited clip. I was gone, replaced by Vanessa. The room fell into dead silence. I turned around, my voice like ice. She didn't just replace me in the company, she erased me from its history. Vanessa interrupted, smooth as honey. We chose the version that best represented the brand. Not everyone fits the media image. I didn't let her redirect. I opened the folder, pulling out my father's handwritten will, in color, verified by handwriting and date experts. This is the original, not the one you altered and submitted to court. My father split shares equally. And he wrote clearly, Camilla will handle it the right way. I handed copies to each board member. Some looked at me. Others turned to Vanessa, searching for a reaction. I continued the slides. Legal documents verified by Ron. Internal emails pulled from the archive, where Vanessa's PR team discussed removing non-banned line founders. They called me non-strategic, but I drafted the first financial roadmap. I led the Arizona expansion deal. I was there from day one. When our office was a rented warehouse with a busted AC and flickering Wi-Fi. My voice didn't waver. Every sentence was a blade. I didn't need to shout. Each word was dynamite beneath Vanessa's fabricated foundation. Lyndon Poe, I gestured to the external hard drive on the table, restored system logs before they deleted my name. Line by line, traces they thought were gone. I displayed the override command. Proof, Vanessa had replaced my name with hers at 2 a.m. while I was hospitalized with pneumonia that year. By now, Vanessa wasn't smiling. Her face drained of color. She leaned toward her attorney, whispering something. I caught 2 words. Adjourn now. No one moved. I presented the letter my father had written to the law office just 12 days before he was hospitalized, with a handwritten note. I will meet with Camilla to finalize the terms. Proof that he had not approved the final will that Vanessa later submitted. Mark Pennington, who had remained silent until then, suddenly placed his hand on the table. Vanessa, is this true? Vanessa didn't answer. Her lips were pressed tight, her eyes locked on me, but I saw the struggle in that stare. Not arrogance anymore, but calculated panic. I closed the folder. I'm not asking for a title. I'm not seeking fame. I'm asking this board to look at the truth. Dawson Ventures was built by 2 people, and one of them has been erased from every memory, just to support a performance. I bowed my head. I didn't say another word. I let the evidence speak. 15 seconds of silence passed. Then a board member, Helen Chang, investment director at Raintree Capital, nodded. I'd like to motion for an immediate internal review session and freeze all public relations activity until this matter is investigated. Vanessa sat still like a statue. I walked out of the room. I didn't look back. The hallway wind blew strong, but it didn't make me cold. I knew I had just thrown a match into a house soaked in gasoline. And I would stand still, waiting for it to burn. 3 days after that fateful board meeting, Vanessa Dawson disappeared from the media. No more smug speeches, no more radiant smiles on the cover of Forbes Local. The entire PR campaign for brand repositioning was frozen indefinitely. Even Dawson Ventures' internal newsletter, once calling her the soul of innovation, dared not mention her name. On Friday evening at 6:03 p.m., Dawson Ventures released an official statement on its website. Ms. Vanessa Dawson has chosen to step down from her role as Chief Executive Officer to pursue personal initiatives. The board of directors thanks her for her contributions during her tenure. The words were cold, smooth, and soulless. No apology, no admission of wrongdoing, just a staged retreat dressed up as a graceful exit. But the internet wasn't that naive. Within an hour of the statement being posted, the Baywire Finance Forum exploded with a new thread. Vanessa Dawson, delusional CEO taken down by her own sister? An anonymous account, clearly an internal source, leaked the full slide deck I had presented to the board. Not only were the documents posted, but also the video of me delivering the evidence of forgery, internal emails, and the clip of my father shaking my hand after our 2015 investment deal. From there, hashtags began spreading like wildfire. Truth behind Dawson. Camilla was there. Erase no more. Within 24 hours, the story reached major outlets like Tech Pulse, Business Now, and Corporate Radar. They dug into Vanessa's carefully constructed image, staged videos, inflated credentials, deliberately altered company history. One particular article from Corporate Radar hit hard. Vanessa Dawson is not just a failed executive. She is a case study in power manipulation through family ties and media control, all to erase the true co-founder, Camila Dawson. I read that piece at 2:00 a.m. in my apartment where only the wind whistling through the window breaks the silence. My heart didn't rejoice. I didn't smile. The only thing I felt was a deep exhaustion, like I had just lifted a building off my back. At 9:00 a.m. the next morning, Ron called, his voice full of urgency. "Camila, the board just passed an internal resolution. They're opening a formal investigation into Vanessa's leadership period, and they want you involved as a strategic advisor during the transition." I was quiet for a few seconds, then said each word clearly. "I'm not going back to that table, Ron. I'll build my own." He chuckled softly. He didn't disagree. But what I didn't expect was that the online community would drive this further than any courtroom. An anonymous former IT staffer submitted a set of documents to Baywire's public inbox, proving that Vanessa's team had forced employees to delete logs, modify metadata, and install lockout codes to prevent recovery of original data. Those who had remained silent started to speak up. One said they were fired after objecting to my name being removed from the founding board. Another said they were told to re-edit my speech and present it as Vanessa's before internal broadcasts. Each testimony was another dagger driven into the illusion Vanessa had built over 4 years. Then came the final blow. An HR employee leaked an audio recording of a private meeting between Vanessa and her media consultant, where she flatly said, "Camila might be the backbone, but I'm the face. The public remembers who's on camera, not who wrote the slides." That clip spread on Reddit and Twitter like a toxic virus. Comments poured in. The painful truth is, in every organization, there's always someone who steals someone else's spotlight. Vanessa Dawson wasn't cancelled because she was exposed. She was cancelled because she thought she was untouchable. Camila is living proof. You might be erased from the board, but no one can erase a real legacy. On the 7th day, Dawson Ventures released a new statement. They were suspending all media involving Vanessa Dawson and officially removing her name from the internal founders registry. She never appeared in public again. Her social media accounts were deleted. The CEO's office was sealed for legal audit. I never received an apology. I didn't need one. That evening, I walked into my study and opened the metal cabinet. Inside was an old photo. My father and me, sitting on cardboard boxes, in an office with a single hanging bulb and a whiteboard full of scribbles. On the photo, my father had written in marker, "Every company has founders, but only a few have someone who protects its soul." I didn't need my name reattached to the lobby wall, because now, the world already knew who really built Dawson Ventures from the ashes of a dream. I stood on the steps of Innovation Hall at 5:00 p.m., holding an embossed invitation card with my name in gold. Camila Dawson, honored co-founder. The early autumn wind rustled the oak trees, carrying the scent of resin and aged wood. Everything around me was quiet, but inside me, it wasn't. I had lost a career, a name, and reclaimed every shard through a kind of resilience not everyone dares to carry. And now, they wanted me to walk on stage, stand beside the Dawson Ventures logo, and smile for photos, as if everything had just been a small misunderstanding that had been corrected. I didn't walk into the auditorium right away. I sat on a stone bench near the courtyard, watching people arrive for the ceremony. They were all well-dressed. They were all polite. They all pretended to forget that I had, once, been erased from the company's map. Ron had called me that morning, his voice cautious. "The board wants to invite you to receive the Founder's Honor Plaque at tonight's event. They've corrected your name on all internal documents and the official website." I replied simply, "I'll come. But I won't step on that stage." He paused for a moment, then said, I understand. Inside the auditorium, the event began with polished speeches. They talked about the arduous startup journey, core values that can't be denied, and the return of a legacy. No one said my name until the final segment of the program. The person assigned to introduce me was Harrison Grant, the interim director recently appointed by the board to replace Vanessa. He got everything right, pronounced my name correctly, acknowledged my real accomplishments, even thanked me for helping restore fairness. I remained in my seat in the middle row, unmoving. A few people turned to look at me, waiting. I gently shook my head. Grant continued his speech without skipping a beat. Finally, he said, "And if Camila chooses not to come up on stage tonight, that does not make her any less. Her silence only emphasizes what truly matters. Honor is not returned through words, but through action." I lifted my head. For a moment, I felt the old anger drain from my chest like smoke after a wildfire. Soon after, the event ended. People began drifting toward the reception area. I stood, preparing to slip out quietly, but a voice behind me stopped me. "Miss Camila?" I turned. A young woman stood there, hair tied back neatly, wearing an intern name badge. Her eyes sparkled, and she held a worn notebook in her hand. "My name's Julia. I'm an intern in the Strategic Development Department. I just wanted to say, I read your real estate AI proposal from 2016. I think it's truly amazing." I was surprised, not by the compliment, but that someone so young still cared about a document buried for nearly a decade. "That proposal isn't in the system anymore," I said. "How did you read it?" "I found it in the raw data archive. When I heard what happened to you, being erased from the company's history, I wondered if anything you did was still out there. So I searched. I figured, if no one else remembers, I will." I looked at her for a long time, then smiled for the first time in months. Not a bitter smile, a warm one. "Thank you, Julia. That's the most beautiful thing you could do for someone who was erased." She blushed, then reached out her hand. "I am honored to shake yours." I took her hand, a small hand but firm. Something stirred inside me. Not fire, not pain, but hope. That night, I didn't drive straight home. I went to the cabin in the suburbs of San Rafael, the one I used to retreat to during my startup days, where I wrote Dawson Ventures' first business plan at a small wooden desk by the window. I cleaned up the old room, opened my laptop, and began writing a new document. Not a lawsuit, not a revenge memoir, but a launch plan for an entirely new project called the Anchor Initiative, a program to support founders who have been pushed out of the companies they created. I would use my voice, my experience, and my scars to help people like me no longer suffer in silence. I no longer needed them to put my name back on the company wall. I carved my name into a place that mattered more: the stories of those who refused to give up. When I turned off the lights, with only the sound of crickets outside the window, I realized I hadn't won back a title. I had reclaimed my voice. And sometimes that is stronger than any throne. Camilla's story isn't just about reclaiming justice. It's a powerful reminder that truth can be buried, but never erased. Even when betrayed by family, her honor crushed, and her name wiped from history, Camilla chose not to seek revenge, but to stand for her true worth. She didn't need a stage. She needed the truth to be seen. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't taking back a title, but living in alignment with your values and dignity. What do you think about Camilla's journey? Did she make the right choice in standing for the truth instead of seeking revenge? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional and meaningful family stories to come.